Hey everyone, and welcome back to my studio. We are going to be painting a mandarin today in watercolor. I've chosen a mandarin because it's a very simple shape as well as a lovely color. And I'm hoping in this video you'll get a little bit of information about the color wheel as well as painting a light and shadow arrangement. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about light and shadow arrangement, it's just one of the techniques that you can use when you're painting. A light and shadow arrangement means that I have a single light source shining on my subject. So if I'm looking at my mandarin, now I always love to paint from life or from a reference photo. The reason why I do this is because I do not do well at painting from my imagination. However, if you are really good at painting from your imagination, please do so because it's the best thing that you can do. So, light and shadow arrangement. A light and shadow arrangement basically means I have a single light source and it's coming at my my subject and it's hitting from a particular angle. Now I can have it from any angle, but in this instance I'm just showing it's coming from this angle. And then I have my subject. So my subject is my mandarin. So let's just draw a very simple thing that looks like a mandarin. And it's going to have a cast shadow. So it's going to cause a cast shadow to come off like this because my light source is hitting here and the light hits my subject in straight lines like this. It's then going to have a distinct light side and a distinct shadow side. Now in the light side I'm going to have a highlight, a light and a half light. So basically a dark light, and this dark light here, which sits around here. So if you have a look at my ball, I've got these concentric circles. This dark light sits around here. It is actually the color of my object because it's not influenced by the light. I mean it is, but it's not as influenced as much. So this part, the light section of my mandarin, this part here, is affected by the color of the light. So the color of my light is a warm yellow. It's going to affect the color of my mandarin. If it's a cool yellow, it's going to affect the color of my mandarin in a different way. So it could be a green light. If I have shone a green light on it, it's going to have an influence over the color that sits in the light. In the dark light is going to be less influential, and as soon as I get into the shadow it's going to be less, it's going to be not even really get there. So in the shadow I have here, so this is my shadow side. In my shadow side I actually have this part here is called a bunch of different things. It could be called the terminator, bed bug line, a whole bunch of different things. But this shadow here is actually the darker section, not the darkest, but the darker section of the shadow on the actual object itself. This section here is reflected light because what happens is the light comes down, hits this surface and bounces back up, and it will bounce back up in different areas. And this section here of my shadow is going to be lighter than the bed bug line or the terminator, but not as light as anything that's in the light. This is really important. It's never as light as anything that's in the light. And then I've got my cast shadow, which is this part here. And into my cast shadow, right down the bottom through here, I have what we call an occlusion shadow, where pretty much, because what's happening over in this section of my shadow is my secondary light source, particularly like in say for example a landscape, I've got my light source of the sun. Over here I'll have the light source of the sky, and it will actually come down and influence this part of my light, but it cannot get into here. So this section here is the darkest section of my shadow, my occlusion shadow. That's the sections that you need to understand when we're painting a light and shadow arrangement. So I'm going to move this aside, and I've already started drawing my mandarin shape on my paper, and I'm basically I am going to mark where that little knobby little thing is. Don't ask me the name of it, and it's more just a dark shape to me. I don't name things. And then this is my lovely cast shadow that's coming out through here. And I know that this here is my shadow line, and then I've got my light. So when I go to paint that, I need to understand these things. I need to understand where I want to put certain things. So I'm going to initially start off by painting the light and trying to remember where the highlight is on my object. So on my mandarin, the light tends to sit just around here as a sort of merging over into the darker light, okay, on the edge, not in the middle, on the edge. So I'm going to pick up this lovely warm light because even though my orange is orange, my mandarin is orange, as I said, the light is going to influence it. So the actual color of the light is going to influence, and I'm going to imagine a warmer light on my mandarin. I could imagine there's a cooler light, but I'm going to imagine that there's a warmer light on it. And I'm going to start by putting that color down and trying to avoid where the highlight is going to go. So the highlight is going to go in through here. I'm going to come around that. And I'm going to go slowly because I want to start coming in and just softening that highlight area because I don't want it to be too harsh. I want to have a lovely soft edge. I don't want to come all the way. I still want to have the light, the white of the paper, the light, be there. So I'm just doing that, and then I'm going to come down. And as I'm coming down, I'm going to then pick up I'm going to try and pull this color into the I'm getting into the darker light section of my mandarin. I'm going to start influencing that with a bit of red. And I want the colours to mix by themselves on the paper. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you need to push it a little bit. But I'm starting to get the actual colour of the mandarin. And I'm going to pull that colour just up a bit into the light because, you know, it's not totally, it's not all, I don't want this all to be yellow because the light is there, but it's also sort of spotty. I'm not sure if I can explain this, but anyway, very well. But anyway, let's pull this up. And basically the color of your object is going to be depicted in this the darker light section. So if I need it to be more yellow, more yellow-orange, I'm going to put in more yellow. If I need it to be more orange, more red-orange, I'm going to drop in more of the red. And I can play around with that, but I'm enjoying what's happening there. If I think that this is a bit too red, I can come back in over the top, as I said, and drop in some more yellow, just to soften that a bit. The biggest problem with watercolor is putting too much water down, and I do it all the time. But just remember that, you know, you can control watercolor. Okay, so now I'm going to start bringing this down into my shadow side. Now the shadow side is going to start becoming a lot darker. So if I've got a color wheel, now this might ruin my picture, but if I've got a color wheel, so I've got yellow, red and blue, this is my color wheel. What I'm doing is I'm starting from my yellow and I'm moving around to my red, because if I had, and this is my orange in the middle, if I use orange and I go the complete opposite to blue and put that in, I get a very muddy color, but I don't want a muddy color, I want a really lovely color. So I'm moving around my color wheel, and so I'm going to pick it up and put a little bit more red into my orange. I'm going to pick up a different red, like a cooler red. I'm moving around that colour wheel and going around the colour wheel. Drop that in. I still want some yellow in there because it's, you know, still an orange. I'm pushing it. see how beautiful these colours are? See how they're not they're not muddy. I'm just moving them around. I mean, this is possibly not the best way to paint watercolour sometimes, but I'm enjoying what this is doing. So now I'm going to continue. Instead of going from here now to red to purple, I'm actually going to jump across, and I'm going to put a bluey kind of green in. So I'm going to go for my more bluey green. I'm actually going to drag this colour down into here. And I'm going to actually pick up a bit of a bluey green. Sorry about that. That's my little dogs fighting over a bit of cardboard, making a lot of noise. I'm going to start putting in a bluey green. To create that darker section of my mandarin. Drop in some more of the red. And I'm going to put all three colours in here because I am creating a grey. I don't want it too light, that's a bit too light. See, I go, oh, that's a bit too light. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a bit of that blue, drop it in. And go, okay, a bit more of that red in there. You can sort of see which colours start to dominate a bit, like that red, this alizarin crimson is really it really does push other colours out of the way. I do love this colour through here, so I'm really enjoying that. I might actually do the same thing up here. I might put a bit more of that yellow in there. And then drop in that bit of that blue. Now, as I'm getting down into that's my my bed bug line or my terminator, I'm actually going to drag the colour. I'm going to not put much colour on. I'm just going to drag these colours down so that they are still lighter. And if I need to, I can add some of that yellow in there. So I've got this lovely transition. I'm going to now come into my shadow, and I'm going to start pulling that colour. And my initial colour on my shadow is going to be not as dark as what I want it to be in the end, because I'm going to put that lovely occlusion shadow in there. But I want to drag these colours that are in the actual mandarin into the colour of the surface. So this surface here could be, a brown table, it could be a white tablecloth, it could be a whole bunch of different things. I'm going to imagine that it is actually similar to a white tablecloth, and I'm just going to influence some lovely colours and just drop the colours in and let them just do their thing. And I'm going to leave that to dry. And once it's dry, you can kind of sort of see that this is sort of starting this mottled effect. I'm going to come back over the top and put some more detail in. And then I'm going to put some more detail into this section here. But I need this to dry. This is a little bit too wet for me. And you can sort of see that this here is, I've got a bit of a line here. I don't mind that. I can actually come back over the top and I can influence that. But let's leave this dry for now, and then I'm going to come back over the top and show you what I do when I get to do some more detail in the actual mandarin itself. Okay, that's nicely dried. I'm a little bit wet in some areas, but I'm not worried about that because I'm going to come and paint up over the top of this. So I'm going to use the same colours that I've been using, but I'm going to put another layer over the top, and I'm going to let my paintbrush dance over the surface. If I just paint flat over the top of it, I'm going to obliterate all that lovely colour underneath, and I don't want to obliterate that colour underneath. I want to actually leave it there, and what I'm doing is just by putting this other layer over the top is I actually am creating darker sections on my mandarin. which gets that look of the skin, that pitted look. So, you know, you let your brush just dance over the surface. You don't need to do a lot of it, but right.
Leanne shows the path so right, with watercolors, pure delight. Find your hues in day or night. She whispers to the eager hands, every color she understands. Through the blues and every hue, she says, believe in what you do.
And the undercolours that are under there are going to just shine through. And now I'm just putting a glaze up and over the top of an orange glaze over the top of all those lovely colours underneath there. And I'm going to then come in and I'm going to start looking at painting the little pit, the centre part of my mandarin. And I know it's green, so I'm going to start with the yellow, drop in the yellow, and then drop in the blue. Because it's slightly raised up a bit, I'm going to drop into that bit of that darker colour that I've got through there, just there. Soften the edges where I want to. And I'm going to add a little bit more dark bits through there. I'm then going to come and focus on, I might put a little bit more yellow in it. I'm going to now focus on about putting some information down in this section through here. Same thing, I'm going to drop in some warm colour into that occlusion shadow, and then drop in some blue over the top of that. And then let it fly off. I don't want to do too much. I think I'm coming in and might be ruining this, but I just felt like this needed a bit more information down through here. And that is how I paint a lovely mandarin. I hope this has been helpful. I hope particularly the colour wheel idea where you move yourself around the colour wheel rather than going from, they say, if you want to create the opposite colour, the shadow side, just add a bit of the complement. But when you do that, you get these greys, and I much prefer to move around my colour wheel slightly and then jump across to the complement of that other colour that I landed on. So if I started with yellow and I ended on red, I'd jump across and get a green. If I went from yellow to orange and I then jump across and go to blue, those kind of things. And that's how I usually paint my my paintings. And I also usually paint by dropping in colours and letting the colour mingle on its surface. So that's how I paint my things. Paint things. I'm looking for soft edges, where I want like softer edges. I might need to soften this slightly because I want the eye to go from here to here to here. If this here is too light, I'll darken it. I can put another glaze over the top. But essentially, this is how I go about painting mandarins. Okay, so hopefully that's been really helpful. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. See you guys. Have a wonderful week. Bye.
She says, believe in what you do.